Welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory. Know someone who is making an impact for God's kingdom using their gifts, talents, and passions? We'd love to meet them. Send us an email at podcast@giftsforglory.com. That's podcast@gifts4glory.com. And now here is our host, Dave Ebert.
Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the latest edition of Gifts for Glory. We're so glad that you're joining us, whether you're live here on social media. And today, as we go live, we hope you're able to join us on our Facebook page. But we are live on both YouTube channels for Gifts for Glory and for Thrive Church. So get your comments and questions ready. We've got a really fun show planned for you tonight. But as we begin tonight's episode, we begin every episode with our Devotions with Dave segment. Today's devotion, I want to talk about Ephesians 4, 11, and 12. And we're celebrating Clergy Pastor Appreciation Month here in October. And that's why I asked our guest tonight to come on, because we want to show some love to all of our pastors. So for those watching, leave us a comment and brag on your pastor. If you're a fellow member of Thrive Church with me, leave some love for our pastors. And if you go to a different church, leave some love for your pastors. We love to honor them as well as we celebrate Pastor/Clergy Appreciation Month. But to our devotion segment, Ephesians 4, 11, and 12. Now, these are gifts Christ gave to the church, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and build up the church, the body of Christ. And I like this passage because it shows our responsibility as far as building the church. The apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers, they build us up. They give us the tools and the equipment to build up the church. It's not their job to do it all. We are all required to have quote unquote some skin in the game. And so what they do to equip us, when they pastor, they mentor, they disciple us, we're to take that out and bring people into the church. Not necessarily the church that we go to, but into the grand church, the body of Christ. So it's very much a participatory sport. It's not a sit back and watch from the pew. Being a Christian, following Christ, is very action minded. So we get equipped and then we go out, and that's how we fulfill the Great Commission. It's not your pastor's job to build his church. It's not the apostles. It's not the teachers. It's not their job to build the church. It's their job to preach, teach, and equip. And it's our job to take that out. Now, that doesn't absolve them of the responsibility of still discipling and reaching out to people, but it's not their job. That's their job is to equip us. So when you go to church, listen, absorb, receive it, and then take it out and help build God's church and God's kingdom. So that is our Devotions with Dave segment for tonight as we come from Ephesians. And I want to bring in our guest at this time. He is my pastor. He's pastor of Thrive Church. You can find him on Instagram, on Facebook at Encounter Thrive, or at encounterthrive.com. Great church of people. A lot of challenges with being a church plant. They're only 5 years old. I say they, but it's we, because we're all in it together. But let me bring in Pastor Brian Bougher. Pastor, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm glad we can carve out time, because unlike what many people think, a pastor's job doesn't just stop at 12 o'clock on Sunday, especially a pastor with 5 kids.
Yeah. I never sleep. No, I'm kidding. They're pretty amazing kids, but yeah, no, ministry's kind of especially pastoring is kind of a 24/7 gig, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into your testimony, because that's part of what we do on the show. But how did you get into being a pastor? Was it a genuine calling? Was it influence from parents? I mean, I kind of know the story, but for those that are tuning in that don't, how did you first find your calling as a minister?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it really probably does tie back right into my testimony, because when I was 9 years old, I came to Christ at the church I grew up in, and I ran to the altar because I was like, I am going to hell. Well, a little bit like, I need a savior. Like, this is not good. But I ran into the arms of Jesus that night, and the Lord saved me. But within a couple years of that, in that church, I really felt like the Lord was calling me to preach, and I can't necessarily pinpoint the exact moment, but I remember grabbing my mom and saying, I'm gonna preach. I'm called to preach the gospel. Like, that's gonna be my job." Mm-hmm. And then along the way, how that morphed into just being a local church pastor. Well, that's a lot of different things over the years. But it definitely came from that moment of feeling an urgency and a call to preach. But then as I went to Bible college, and I thought I was going to travel and minister, and I did that for a few years with the team. But my burden and heart just kept growing more and more for the local church, just realizing, man, this is God's plan for the world. And we support parachurch ministries, and they're great, but at the end of the day, God set up the local church, and that's his plan, and his heart and his burden. And it's not the sexiest thing, it's not the coolest thing, and it's often not the biggest thing going, but it's lasted 2,000 years and changed the face of the earth. So I think it's a pretty awesome thing God's got going.
Thrive is a church plant that's 5 years old. that has had ups and downs, but God's been faithful, obviously. But it also has the challenge of not having its own building. We kind
Yeah.
of follow the pillar of fire or cloud from place to place as God leads. So, as a pastor that's planted a church, what were some of the surprises of planting a church, and what are some of the things that maybe people don't realize go into planting a church?
Man, I got to tell you, I had way back, like even in Bible college, I remember a guy coming and talking about church planting and planting churches, and I just remember thinking, man, that's stupid. That's just dumb because because like there's so many churches already. Why would you do any more? Like who needs more church? Get a job. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like can't find a real ministry job, and so that's what happened to me. And, uh, but I think even there, God was putting something in my heart. And about 2004, I spent most of my ministry years in Madison, Wisconsin, until we moved back to Chicagoland 8 years ago. My wife is from up there, and I spent many years up there under a great pastor and friend, Brian Peterson. Um, but and when we moved back here, I knew, and even back in 2004, I'm going to plant a church, and I think I'd want to do it in the south suburbs of Chicago, in the Southland where I grew up, just having a burden and a heart. And when we came back here, um, I just saw so many churches that I knew and loved struggling like so many other churches. And I remember, like, man, when I grew up here, church was blowing up, God was on the move, people were hungry, the churches were full.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and it's not unique to Chicagoland by any means. It's across the globe and definitely across America. The church has shrunk. And why? Well, it's not because the gospel still doesn't work. It's not because God isn't still moving. And we could say because we did. I'm done analyzing why the church, why churches shrunk. Or like I've read all the articles, I've listened to all the podcasts, and that's cool. But I just basically said we're going to win souls and preach the gospel and make disciples. And because Jesus still moves and the gospel still works and he still changes lives. And so that's what we did. It just said we're going to plant a church that wants to authentically love God and authentically love people. And we want people to encounter him. And that's our tagline, encounter God, love people. How that turned into a plant was that we wanted to do a new work because over 80% of people who come to Christ do so in a church that's less than 10 years old.
Hmm.
And that was the main thrust. It was like people are coming to Christ in young churches. And so that was it. Like, God, we want to plant a church to see people come to know you. And if that's how we're going to do it in the Southland, then that's how we'll do it. And then we've been all over the place. So we first, 3.5 years pre-corona, we were in schools. We were in one school that was really nice as far as the stage, beautiful, amazing stage. And I have it in my office to this day, where our screen was. They had this big black backdrop that was really fun. And then our screen would go in the middle of it. But then there'd be this big gap, where you could see behind. So we tried to cover that up. But so we had a softball, and we would tie a rope to a softball, and we would throw it over the track. And if you got it on the first one, it was like God's going to be in the house today because you got it over the first time. And then we would do that on both sides and then pulley it up. So there was black cloth above the black screen. But it was a room that seated 600 people. And at that time on a Sunday, the adults in the room were like 50 to 70 adults. And it was like, thanks for coming out, both of you. And then after 2 years, we had to move. There was a Sunday in that school we had to share with a dog show. So literally we're having church and there's about 50 other people in the same school back and forth walking their dogs around. So we shared church with dogs one day. There were numerous other things. Then there was, when we moved, we were told in this next school, oh, you can leave stuff up and and which we were so excited about. We've never been able to do that. And we're like, this is going to be awesome. We had one Sunday in that building, and it was an extremely low Sunday on top of it. And then what happened was we got a phone call saying, hey, you have to move gyms this week and you can't leave your stuff up anymore because the EPA has shut down the gym you're meeting in. And I was like, what?
No.
Like the federal government agency, the EPA? Yeah, there's creosote and it's toxic and we can't be in there. And it's going to be vacuum sealed off so nobody can go in or out because it'll kill you.
Wow.
Like, and then a year later, year and a half later, we got a phone call saying, yeah, so there's a pandemic and you can't meet here anymore. And that was 3.5 years into Thrive. And there was a Sunday in the school where we had to meet in this tiny little space. We had one of our biggest Sundays ever in a room that was about 20 by 30, and it's just been crazy. And then from Corona till now, from the beginning of Corona to now, I think we've been in a dozen different locations. What we've seen, like, growth at every single one. We've seen God move. We met under tents outside. We met nursery and kid church for long periods of time have been in bars, as you know, Dave. And which we actually prefer that. That's in our contract. Our infants are in bars, so that's a joke. And now we just moved again because the place we were, where was the last place we were in? We were kind of subletting, and then the people who sublet just basically said we don't want to share anymore, and so now we're in a new place, and so we've bounced around a lot. We are saving towards a building and shopping, and we know God's going to lead us, and He has provided. And I know others who, Rick Warren, they were portable for 20 years before they ever had a building, and I really think Rick Warren's going to make it someday.
Maybe,
really think he's going to land on his feet.
I believe so too. And the story of Thrive is just impressive because of the fact that despite not having that stable, permanent location, with each move, there's been a person here or a family there that have just been kind of absorbed into the family, and they follow. Yeah. And especially for a church that doesn't have a building, that is still under 5 years old, to grow and be successful, not only in normal times, but also through the pandemic when so many churches are being shuttered permanently. It just speaks to not only you, but also the entire leadership at Thrive of being willing to follow God wherever He leads.
God has been so good and faithful. And like Corona, when Corona happened, and we were just kind of plateaued and struggling at that point. We had like big spikes and drops downs, no pun intended, with Corona. We'd have up and down seasons where we're doing really good and other seasons where we're lower. But we just kept plowing through. But for probably the last 6 months to a year, up to when Corona hit, we were just struggling and plateaued. And I tried everything in my pastor bag of tricks and cool church and just different things. And as this is happening, I just thought, this is it. Like, how are we going to survive this? God, I mean, it's your church. I trust you, but I know you can raise the dead, but come on. That's how it felt. And sure enough, like a week or two in, Eric, one of the guys in our church, said, hey, I used to do Christian TV for another church, etc. We can set up a studio in my basement and I can make this happen. And those are the moments where you're just floored, like, wow, really? And not only that, he did a phenomenal job. The whole team did. It wasn't just Eric, but the whole team did a phenomenal job. I just remember thinking, man, we look good. Like, we look really good. This is a quality program. We're doing all right. And then even when we came back, I thought, where are we going to go? Who's going to have us? And we can't go back into the schools because the schools were closed to everybody back then.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to meet outside for a little bit, but at what point, what were we going to do? Where were we going to go? Well, is almost like even in that season with Corona, because all these event spaces couldn't rent to anybody because they had to be closed, but they could rent to us because we didn't have the restrictions, and we're not a mega church, so we don't have to navigate a whole bunch of things. We're able to distance pretty easily and follow, and while not being too overcrowded. And it was so we could rent in a lot of places, and we were able to go to places that said, please come in, we can't rent to anybody else. And now the challenge we've had is kind of the opposite. As things have reopened, schools still have really strong restrictions, but everywhere else is renting to everything they possibly can, and there's a bunch of things rented out because all those events for 2020 are rebooked for 21, plus all the events for 21. And so, but God's provided again, that we have another great place to go, and it's really nice. Even this past Sunday, first Sunday there, so many people in church are saying, this is a really nice space. All the kids in nursery team were like, this is the best room we've ever been. So it's God's been good.
Yeah. And this is not necessarily a slap at other churches, but when we were not yet at Thrive when everything shut down, but we got to see some of the videos that you guys were able to produce from Eric's basement, and they did look good. Whereas so many churches who were so far behind technology, they came out looking like the kids in the Blair Witch Project, and the camera up the nose, and
yeah.
And it just
and we all did feel so scared, didn't we?
Yeah.
Stop.
So it's just a testament to God's faithfulness that even though He didn't show you the end, He said just keep coming, and He was able to provide everything along the way, and you see the fruit because you were seeing salvations and baptisms and people coming to church, people coming back to church. So
I had family members watching, unsafe family members, aunts, uncles, cousins watching our services that had never expressed. I mean, ones I barely even talked to. You're like, wow, you're watching? Yeah, no, I watch every week. You're like, wow, that's amazing. So and even still, some of them watch even still. So
nice. So, Brian, I want to transition, and we touched on it earlier on in the conversation, but you were 9 years old. Was at that time, was your family, was it a Christian home, or were you just going to church because that's the thing to do, and then that's where God got a hold of you? How did you reach that point of choosing Jesus at 9 years old?
So my family was, it was, for lack of a better way to say it, in transition towards Christianity. Because my dad really didn't come to Christ till I was 14. He was kind of along for the ride with my mom. We were in church, but he wasn't serving the Lord. And my mom was a new young believer, really came to Christ when I was a baby. So, 700 Club discipled her a lot, and what happened was we moved when I was about 7 years old. And then as we moved, the school district I moved to, I went from like a cool kid that a lot of people liked to just a nobody and a loser. And I spent the next several years just struggling, and really all the way through eighth grade, till maybe eighth grade. In eighth grade, it started to switch. And then in high school, we moved school districts. But I just spent the next several years just being bullied and picked on, just in the loser crowd of kids. I felt alone a lot. And then just at 9, I just doing whatever I could to be accepted. I was, rebellious or listening to bad music and saying bad words, as rebellious as you can get as a 9-year-old kid. With two parents who were fairly solid. I wasn't doing drugs or even smoking. I was just swearing, and swearing badly. I don't think I even knew where to place a swear word. It's like a kid with bad adjectives and stuff. But and my brother had recently really come to the Lord and given his life fully And he tells on me. I remember one night to my parents because he sees me doing this stuff, and then within a few weeks we went to a service at church, and it was a guy preaching on backmasking and the evils of rock and roll, and which yeah, it's going way back. So if you're not familiar, like if you play music backwards, you'd find satanic messages and stuff. And I don't know how that works now in the digital age because it's really hard to play music backwards. But, uh, but I did know in that moment, I just felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit. Like, I'm not going down a good road. I'm listening to a lot of this music. Some of these people are my heroes. And, again, I'm not a, anti-secular like music type person. It was just a moment where I felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit. Like, I'm not going down a good road. I am in sin. I am a sinner and I need a savior. And I did. I ran to the altar. And I raised my hands for the very first time, and I met the Holy Spirit. I met Jesus Christ that night. I know it. And then from there, nothing changed at school. If anything, I would say it got worse, and it got worse for a long time. I spent a lot of years getting jumped and bullied and picked on, and just felt like a loser for a lot of my life. But the Lord had His hand on me, saying, "You're a winner to me. I make losers into winners. I redeem lives. I'll make you somebody of influence. I'll make you not just the last. I'll make you a leader." Just things like that, like over and over and over, hearing the Lord, encourage me. And church was the place. Church was the place I was safe. Church was the place I was loved. Church was the place I was believed in. So, and I could find horror stories. Now I've been in ministry 22, 23 years, full-time ministry. And man, I could probably beat most people's horror stories when it comes to what a church could do to somebody. I got those stories, but man, it's good for me. The good the church has been to me has far outweighed the bad. And the good of God's people has far outweighed the bad of God's people. And the good of good pastors has far outweighed the bad, just down the line. And so God just got a hold of me, and I don't know. Now I'm meandering. So why don't you just interrupt me, Dave?
Well, I was going to ask, would it be fair to think and say that the years of bullying and abuse prepared you for ministry in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think even more so for these days when a lot of people are bowing down or running from culture or compromising on what they believe in order to be accepted, in order to go along, in order it was done early in my life. Like, no, when nobody else loved me, Jesus does. So I'm not backing down on loving Him. I'm not gonna beat you up with it either. I want to show you the love of Christ. But if you think I'm gonna back down on loving Jesus, there's no way. He's everything to me, and He saved me, and He called me friend when nobody would.
Yeah.
And that's pretty awesome that the God of the universe, not just the cool kid in class, but the God of the universe says, "Hey, I call you friend."
Yeah. Do you think your radical transformation at 9 helped kind of accelerate your dad's coming 5 years later? Because you said,
Man, that's a good question. I think so. I hate doing that in interviews. That's a good question. I just keep saying it automatically. Everybody says that, don't they? That's a good question. No, it's like, and so with you. I think so. I don't fully know. I think that's probably a better question for him, but I do know I saw more and more transformation in him. And then around 14, like he had moments, and God was just moving in my life, and I think that was drawing him. But I think it was all of it. I think it was my mom, my brother, me, drawing my dad's heart. They went on a lot of mission trips, and my dad was like, "I can do that," and it was service trips, but those moments, just began to draw his heart.
And right now, your mom and your dad serve at Thrive. They have the
They
coffee
do.
ministry. They do absolutely awesome with that. And I think once Thrive gets our own building, they're going to need their own room to prepare everything that they're bringing out.
They
'Cause,
go over and above, don't they?
yeah. And so it's phenomenal that the entire Bauer family that's in the area is serving. I know that as a church plant, there's some necessity to having the kids come and have all hands on deck, but you see the servant leadership coming from Colin, from Nate, from Drew, and you see it's going to happen with Shine when she gets a little bit older. So it's really cool to see how that culture is grown in your family to serve.
Yeah, and I mean we don't like originally we didn't make our kids um, do that like come to set up early and things like that. But like our older boys, especially, they were like, if I ever tried to leave without them, it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because they love their local church, but just began to teach them like you don't serve here because dad's the pastor. You serve here because it's your local church, and we serve. That's what we do. We belong in the local church. So you love and serve in your local church, and you're part of it because it's your church. It's your community of faith, and you come around them and you serve them. Not the whole PK thing. I don't know, but I just felt like we haven't dealt with that. My kids love the Lord, and I'm humbled and grateful more than anything. Like if I make it across the finish line loving Jesus, I'm still married, and my kids love the Lord. Everything else is gravy.
Yeah. Now, the one thing that I think is an important question to ask is, how do you protect your kids from being taken advantage of by the church? Because I know that sometimes there's a human tendency to think, oh, well, the oldest in the pastor family can do this, or the kids in the pastor family, they can do this. They're young, and they just want to automatically kind of dump everything else on your family instead of doing what I mentioned in the opening with the Ephesians 4, 11, and 12, where your job is to equip us to do the work, much less than us just keep dumping it on you. How did you, or have you run into a point where you've had to protect your kids from getting, those expectations put on them?
Yeah, no, I just let people do that.
Okay.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. So that's come up more so like in the service areas with our kids. Like one of the things in particular, like our kids are good with other kids, and they can be trusted, so there's been times where somebody brought their kids to events, and they're like, your kids will watch my kids, right? Or they'll just assume, oh yeah. Or hey, they showed up early and I brought my toddler, so they can watch. And those are the moments where it's like, I don't know where, I'm the one who signed up for this job, not them.
Right.
So mostly I haven't had to have too many talks. We've really kind of tried to teach our kids, you can say no. You can tell that person, I don't want to do that, or no, I don't think I can do that right now. And just to let them know. But there's been a few times I've said to somebody, hey, I signed up for this job, not them. And you try and say it kindly and in love. Andy Stanley had a great story years ago where his dad, Charles Stanley, Andy Stanley, I think, he had been sneaking out of church with Louis Giglio to go to like eat at a restaurant nearby and then go back by the end. But his dad's sermon would be on the TV in the restaurant, so he could like come back and say, I really like this point, Dad, and this point. And then his Charles Stanley's secretary caught him and kind of like rebuked him or something, or said, he's doing this. And Charles Stanley relayed this story to his son, because his son was like, oh no, I'm going to be in big trouble. And Charles Stanley said, and I told her, you raise your kids your way and I'll raise my kids mine.
Hmm.
And it was this moment where Like, no, 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 no. The weight and guilt of ministry should not be on them. Yeah, the passion and burden to follow Jesus with all your heart, for sure. To belong and serve in a local church, yes. But to be, under the subjugation of ministry when they haven't said yes to that full-time call, no, that's not on them.
Yeah. And that's one of that's a God moment where, as a young boy, he's feeling like maybe he's going to get the wrath, but there's the grace to understand that, as long as you're following Jesus, no matter where you're sitting when you're following Jesus, I think you're going to be okay.
Right. I mean, I don't care what they do. They don't have to go into ministry. They don't have to serve. Like our oldest Colin is interning with the church right now. But I didn't make him do that. That wasn't a push. That was he was going to hang out here and maybe do community college. I just said, would you be interested? And he said, absolutely. So I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude and humbled that my kids love the Lord and they love their church. And I just happen to be the pastor. So,
and you can see the fruit of you and Angela, because as much as you are Pastor Brian Bougher, she's just as much a pastor, because she's got to help minister to you on those days that you're taking the slings and arrows, and also it almost by default is involved in ministering to the women of the church. So, but you can see the fruit in your kids and in your family. And I'm not trying to puff you up, say, oh, they're perfect, because they're the humans. But
no, it's fine. Keep going. More. I like it. It's okay.
But you can see the fruit when you see the kids involved in loving Jesus and serving. You know that you can trust this family and this church that you're leading, because the fruit is evident. And that's just one of the many things that attracted me to Thrive. And when we were in our transition is, we see that there's a solid family leading it, that you can trust in the fruit of what's happening. And you can also see that despite the myriad of challenges, the church is actually thriving, even through a pandemic.
God's been good, man. And not only that, he's brought amazing people. Like one of the things my pastor taught me, he kind of inherited, the pastor I work for, he inherited from his dad, but it really struggled when they kind of came into the picture, and Jesus said, pray for laborers. So that's what they did. And I just remember thinking, let's do the same. And let's just pray for laborers. And we spent years just saying, God, bring godly people, godly leaders, because we can't do this, alone. And he has. So you guys, godly leaders who said, let's get to work. Let's see the work of the kingdom. And numerous others, who, man, just are amazing people of God who I'm blown away that they are even here, let alone serving alongside us,
So on the flip side of ministry, there's always challenges where people will suddenly disappear, will kind of turn their back on or turn against you or the church. As a pastor, how do you deal with that? How do you not absorb and receive that?
Like when somebody leaves the church, or
somebody leaves the church, or there becomes an animosity between you and this person as they're leaving the church, where it's not a peaceable split.
We've been fortunate. We haven't had a lot of that, but we've had some. Man, Dave, I'm going to probably say something that most pastors aren't allowed to. It hurts. It honestly just hurts. And years ago, it used to be like, and people will tell you, don't. It's not personal. It's not. It's like, no, yeah, it is. It is. And here's why. It's not because they want harm to come to you, or they're trying to attack you. If they, they're leaving over something that they disagree on, or they're mad about, or they think you're just dead wrong. Maybe you are dead wrong, and you screwed up or something. It's personal because God called you to do this thing. It's like, yeah, you could be a plumber or a cop or anything, but God called you. That I don't know any pastors who are like, well, I mean, maybe I've known like one or two in my whole life, but most pastors I know are doing it because they feel called. There's rare one who's like, well, I really couldn't do anything else, so I'm just doing this. I don't know too many, like, there's so many other things you could do, so I think it is, it's not personal, but it is. And how do you do that? I think the one thing I think I've learned over and over is, man, you go to war to keep your heart soft, and there's times it's not, but God, keep me soft, thick skinned and soft hearted. So I think you have to keep bringing it back to the Lord. I talk to other pastors here and there. I'll go in for some counseling with a Christian counselor and just talk through some of the stuff that's aching and hurting that I can't share with somebody else. And just Jesus, when Jesus says cast your anxiety on me, that word cast means like to like throw it, violently and with force, cast your anxiety on him. And I think that's what you do over and over and over. Say, God, take this, because the truth is, it's not our church. It's not my church. God could call me out tomorrow, and if he does, I want to be found faithful, not found, trying to marry that bride. Like my pastor once taught me, it's a really good picture in the story of Esther. Who's the pastor? We're the eunuch. We prepare the bride, but she's not ours. And even if we wanted to take advantage of her, we couldn't. It's not ours. She's not. So honor her, love her, and bless everybody going out, even if they don't bless you back. If you're blessing them and they're holding up just the one finger,
Yeah.
And that's, even in that, like, leave it open, because want them to know, hey, you're welcome back anytime. We love you. We are for you. Like, I don't want to hold that stuff in my heart, because again, if I'm holding that stuff in my heart, it's personal in the fact that it's a call, but it's not personal in the fact that it's not my church. They're not my sheep. They're not mine. None of these people belong to me, so they're Jesus's. So if they reject me, they've got to take that up with him, and deal that out with him. And hopefully they don't reject Jesus in the process. Some people do that. That's not been the case very often with Thrive, but I, I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. The recognition that they're not, even though they may be rejecting in their mind you, they're leaving the church that you pastor. It's not your church, and you can't interfere with their free will, because their choices, they'll have to answer for to God. And sometimes you have that Paul and Barnabas moment, and then later you have that reconciliation moment. So you want to leave the door open to reconciliation, because shutting the door to reconciliation is the antithesis of what God ordains and what God calls us to do. That, Paul says, live at peace as much as you can. So that means that when someone walks away from you, still have that door open for peace and for reconciliation. Don't add to the fire to continue the chasm that's been created between you. So I think it's a good word. So with that said, I want to jump into our final two segments, saying let you go, jump, and let you jump off, rejoin your family. The first segment is called The Interrogation. It's 7 random questions that wouldn't have otherwise fit in the interview or in the conversation.
Okay.
So here are the interrogation questions.
Oh, that was Vin Diesel for a second.
I don't have that budget yet.
Vin Diesel. Yeah.
What is your favorite sport and team?
Sport to watch is football and Bears, but man, it's rough days for the Bears.
Yeah. Question number 2. Who makes up your top 3 musicians or bands? And you don't have to use the Christian answers. If you like some secular.
Whoa, that's a tough one, man. Because I'm kind of a music aficionado. I was a worship leader for a lot of years and a little bit of a musician. I get by. Real musicians would laugh at that, but I'll just say a few off the top of my head, like bands and groups that I think are unbelievable and transform my life. Delirious. Um, and those guys were not just an amazing worship band. They were phenomenal musicians. They were incredible writers. Yes, the Beatles are pretty unbelievable, and reshaped the world forever. And I think I do have to say, U2 has had a lot of influence on me over the years. But I also like some hard stuff. I do like I really love like Disciple, Skillet. I enjoy a lot of their stuff from over there. Not everything, but a lot of it. So I'm pretty and I was also a huge Michael W. Smith fan way back. So big, yeah.
I really enjoyed Delirious. I did Christian radio when I was in college. We had a campus radio station. Played a lot of Delirious, a lot of early Newsboys and stuff like that. But yeah, Delirious I
And
think is underrated.
they well we wouldn't have modern worship without them. They're the really ones who did it before like anybody, and they did it solely on their own. There was no money in it. There was no market for it. It was just the heart of God on them. And then, songs like Obsession are just unbelievable, and musically phenomenal,
Now I wonder. This is kind of a sidebar, but there's a new song, new movie that's coming out, documentary piece called "The Jesus Music," produced by K Love. I wonder if Delirious is a part of that, given their impact. It'd be
I have
interesting to
no
see.
idea.
But yeah, it
Yeah, I
just came
would
out
be.
this weekend. So let's move on to question number 3. Who in Scripture do you most identify with?
I wish I could say Jesus. Who do I identify with? Oh, that's good. I've always really loved Paul. I always have thought like Paul, but temperament wise, I feel like Moses. Like I'll just be like, I want to follow you, give you everything. Wait, you want me to do what? And now I'm kind of ticked off,
Yeah.
That's so maybe that. So I don't actually, I have, but I'm not a Peter guy where I don't think I stick my foot in my mouth a lot. I do some, just I can navigate that way. Paul, as far as like I want to passionately give you everything, committed to the word, love the local church, um, and really a pain in the thorn in the side to himself and to several other people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, next question. This can be taken one or two ways. Either answer from a good thing that you'd like to experience again, or a challenging time you'd like to do over. What would you love to do over or experience again?
Okay, so one of those things, a good thing again, or a challenging time I'd like to do over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the most challenging time of my life was when we lost our son, and I would not
Yeah.
want to do that over. So, good thing. I mean, my Bible college years when I was at Christ for the Nations, I finished my degree through Southwestern through a distance ed, and then I did a master's years later. But my time where I met my wife and just long hours of presence in the Lord, and this is before kids and all that stuff, and so very, very little responsibility and a lot of freedom, but more than that, a lot of times of the presence of the Lord and just learning and soaking and enjoying. And you're young, so you feel good all the time physically. That was just an amazing season of life, so fun. And I don't, that was a fun season that, it'll never come back again. But if I could do it again and was able to, that'd be pretty neat.
Nice, very nice. Now,
Yeah.
just to kind of derail for a moment, for people that maybe don't know you, you brought up the fact that you did lose a son. It's been a decade now. So, in as much as you'd like to share about that time, because there are a lot of people that would think that, well, if you're a Christian and if you're a minister, surely God is going to protect you from these things. But it was a time of challenge, and even though you would never want to do it again, there's been things that God's redeemed out of that. Is that kind of an accurate?
Oh man, God transformed my life, from those moments, and so many things. The first thing that comes to mind, we actually named him. We didn't even want to name him this. He passed from SIDS, long story short. But his name was Seth Brian David Bougher. And we didn't even like the name Seth. We just felt like that was his name. And then as he passes away, that name meant set for an appointed time. And then we're standing as we leave the graveside, several people, but one person, and I knew it already, like I knew it in my heart, but they came up to me and they're like, he's the only named child out of all my kids that was named after me, someone in his middle name, Seth Brian David. And that somebody came up and said to me, like, God is going to use his life to make Brian like David.
Wow.
And just have a heart of a worshiper and change you. And I hope that's true. Yeah, I mean, I walked out PTSD and anxiety and different things. But I mean, like even in the last few weeks, so many people just in our church, not to mention outside of it, so many people, like even in these times of Corona and people dying or people getting close to death or just the fear of what's going to happen is taking a toll on a lot of people. And to be able to minister to them and say, I know that what you're feeling right now. I have literally walked this road. My pastor, he said something really good to me in those moments. And he was a great pastor in this moment. I said, I remember saying, I don't know if I can ever pastor again. And it was such sweet, comforting words. He said, Brian, when you get through this, you'll pastor better than all of us. It was very sweet and kind. I don't know if that's true by any means, but I do. There's a level of compassion, and I what you just said, Dave. I had that. I had that. Like this can't happen to me. I'm God's servant. I'm in ministry. I'm a great dad. This and that and the other. Man, that's just my theology was blown apart, and I'm glad it was because it was Western American prosperity type theology. Like, do I believe God heals still today? Yes, I do. Do I believe God does the miraculous? Yes, I do. Do I believe God raises the dead? Yes, I do. And I also believe God is allowed to say no. Both of those things I think are healthy theology. And we make huge mistakes when we try and divorce those in our theology and say, God is God. He's sovereign. He's powerful. He's in control. He delivers. Man, it really is summed up in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He will save us, but even if he doesn't, I will praise him.
Yeah. God didn't save them by avoiding the fire. He saved them through the fire.
Yeah, right. He was with them in the fire. There was another in the fire. Somebody should write a song about that.
Yeah, that'd be a really good song. It almost writes itself.
Just came up with that.
But and I think that's an important lesson for a lot of Christians who think that just because I said yes and I raised my hand on a Sunday and got prayed over, that I'm suddenly inoculated. It's almost like we think that saying yes to Jesus one time is a vaccine, and maybe I shouldn't go down that road. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I think that's an important lesson is being a Christian does not inoculate. It just helps get you through the fire. So
yeah. And I mean, and he did, we ended up having a girl and we'd never had a girl after that. And we had another one that we really didn't think we were going to have, so now we're not Catholic, but you wouldn't know it. So.
All right, let's jump back. What has been your proudest moment?
Oh. You mean that in a good sense, right? Not like this isn't like a.
Yeah. This isn't like something right happened before the fall,
Like here's you're gonna go on Nehemiah on me right after we're done or something.
No.
Or Nathan, I think Nathan the prophet. Lord rebuke you. Man, when you've been in ministry so long, there's so many different moments that are like awesome. But honestly, like the thing I'm most like my wife still loves me, and I still love her, and we still love the Lord and serving Him together. And I've gotten to baptize my kids, and they love Jesus. And man, everything after that, like that's it. I can't top that. I mean, I could talk about a lot of things like planning a church, seeing it survive and now thrive, and no pun intended, and different times in ministry where God just blew up and showed up and did awesome stuff. All that's cool, but nothing's compared to like my kids love the Lord. My wife and I love Jesus together and love serving Jesus together. And that's my dog.
My shadow.
Yeah, he's going nuts with the ball over there.
It's okay. I've heard, you've probably seen the cattail popping up here on the couch every once in a while, but
I thought it was you.
So. Well, that's my cover story.
Yeah, Corona does weird things to people. So
yeah, I know.
I had a tail.
What would you be doing if you were not in ministry? Like if God said, "Hey, step away from ministry," what's something that you'd want to be doing?
Well, so I can answer that, but it would be like I don't know if I can make money off of it. Like I would love to do comedy. I could do stand up or improv. I did it for many years, and just theater in general. I would love to do something in the arts and like production. I think even stand up wise, I think I could possibly come up with something and be all right. But I might, maybe not. I might totally bomb and be horrible. But I did really enjoy that. I love theater stage. I got that in high school, competed, and was part of teams in college. I've done just a tiny bit with you. I wish I could do more, but 5 kids and a church just doesn't leave a lot of time. And yet I really enjoy it. I love it. It's so much fun. So
good. So the final question of the interrogation segment is, what's one feature that you would love to see Thrive's permanent home have? So God says, "Hey, Brian, what do you want in this church that I'm going to build for you?" What would you ask Him for?
A bat cave. No. Just a pole down to it, and there. Man. So I mean, there's so many things. What do I say? Like right off the bat. Whew. Man. Because now you got to be spiritual too.
How about a baptismal with a water slide? Something like that.
I can baptize people anywhere. At this point, I've learned you can baptize people anywhere. I'm not hung up on the baptismal. I'd love a room that could be dedicated solely for worship and prayer. And I'd love to be able to have a coffee shop in the church that like helps pay and feed, missionaries and alleviate human suffering and money that goes to missions. And a place that, kids and families just feel safe and feel God's presence. And is easy to find and get to would be nice. Just, we want to make a mark where we are. We don't want to be like, hey, do you know that field and then that dragon? You keep going past that, and then off the end of the earth, and you'll find us. I don't want that. So I want to be just before you'd have to answer the wizard's questions. So
right. Sounds good. All right, so Brian, the final question I always ask to end my show is for anyone that wants to step up, use their gifts, their talents, their passions, even their experiences for God's glory. What would your wise counsel be?
And that's a good question. So I think first, just do it. Just take a step somewhere, serve somewhere, use your gift somewhere. And I think the local church is the best place to use it. And you're like, I juggle, man. If you juggle, believe me, kids ministry, adults, a lot of things, standing outside, getting people to just come into church events. There's a lot of things you'd be surprised that you can use and serve in the local church. And then using for God's glory, that would be the key, right? I mean, the Bible says, let your gift make room for you. Whatever you're doing, realize it's as unto the Lord. So don't do it for you. Don't do it simply for a career. Don't do it to get somewhere. I actually did. I had a lot of friends saying really strongly in high school, at the end of high school, you should go to the second city. You should go to the second city. And this is 20 some years or 25 years ago, when it was a very different thing. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if I could. I wonder if I could do okay. And one of my very dear friends from high school ended up working for Saturday Night Live. Um, and I thought maybe, and I really felt like the Lord arrested me and said, you can use anything you have for you, but that's not why you have it.
Hmm.
And that being said, there are people God calls them into the full-time arts and into theater or into comedy and into those arenas specifically, not ministry. I get that. I don't think it's all meant to just be inside the walls of the church. But I think you have to maintain that heart that whatever I have is for him. And you can use it as much or as little as you want. But the more willing you are for him to get the glory and us not to get the credit, I think the further he'll take it. If you are consumed with, are you consumed with God using your gift, or are you consumed with you having an opportunity to use your gift? And if it's saying, Lord, use me, I think he'll take it a lot further than we ever could. But if it's for our platform and our ministry, then it'll only go as far as we can.
Yeah. It's very easy to get blinded where you're like, yeah, I'm doing it for God's glory, but that's just lip service. It's like, you set out the flags like, yeah, this is for God's glory, but you're like, cheer me what I got.
It's the rap star, the rock star who's dancing with naked women. They're like, God be the glory. Thanks for this award. Like, I don't think God had much to do with this.
Well, not the God that we call Yahweh. There may be another prince of this earth that you're worshiping there. So, Brian, that was our conversation, our scheduled interview. Thanks so much for being on. Thanks for leading Thrive in such a way that for my wife and I, we're both proud to be members. I don't know if that's a conflict of interest to be proud of your church, but we are.
We love you guys so much. I'm humbled and honored to not just be in church with you, but to be your friend and to know you. And I'm just so humbled and honored to even be in ministry. And hopefully I don't bore your listeners too much. Probably not as exciting as your other guests, but love you guys. Thank you for having me.
I've had a couple boring guests, and you're not on that list.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Name names. No, I'm kidding.
Maybe after we go off here. For anybody listening, watching, check out encounterthrive.com or on Instagram and Facebook, if Facebook is still up, at Encounter Thrive, and connect with us, find out where we're meeting. Currently, as we're live, we meet at the Delwood Park Community Center, and then we'll see where the pillar of fire or smoke lead us next until Lord gives us a permanent place. But there's something exciting about seeing God so busy and so active in our church's future, and so it's really exciting to be a part of. So, Brian, thank you so much. We will see you on Sunday because we are back in town. So we'll see you for setup on Sunday.
Woo! Thanks, man.
For everyone that's watching and a part of the show, we thank you so much. We're going to take next week off. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the associate pastor of Thrive, Reichert Zalameda. Reichert's a phenomenal musician, hard worker, and really looking forward to hearing his story in 2 weeks on the 18th. So for everyone here at Gifts of Glory, thanks for watching, and thanks for being a part of our show.